must be immune. He can't take a hint. He just keeps going. It's like, what is that? He's just like, no, I don't think so. He's been bitten so many times, that moth. Wow.
I love the country that I was born into also.
4 inches rain.
The videos that he showed, the chaos, hate, anger, divided people.
6 inches rain. Here's a full bucket. 8 inches of rain. Hard to say how much. You know, 'cause these are under leaves. But it rained like crazy. Got this done. For now. You can kind of see, you know, the footing raising up that back edge at 8 inches. Allowed the concrete to come out. So I mean, you know, like, depending on the area, sticks out various farnesses, you know, but it's actually really stable. So in order for it to, you know, it's got a slight angle on it going outwards, slight angle going outwards. In order for it to go in, you know, not only is it gotta go past center of gravity, it's also got that little bit of step out. You know, right here it's about 2.5 inches. And yeah, this is after, you never know, maybe 6 inches of rain, kind of maybe. I'm guessing what we got here. Yeah, it already caved in. You know, and as it caves some more and more, you know, it'll fill in and pack in, and then in order for it to lift up, you know, fall forward, it has to lift up that 2.5 inch footings covered in dirt, it has to lift up all that dirt, you know. So it doesn't want to move, you know. These last ones, kind of like, you know, perfection is taking away everything you can. So it's kind of getting rid of unnecessary steps. You know, I didn't put in any pegs. You know, this middle pour was the last of these little pegs, spacers. I didn't do them on this back one. No problem there. But I also didn't put in any of these, you know, front rebar stakes. You know, and this is the first one I did, and it blew out a little. So definitely need those front rebar stakes, at least, you know, at the seam. You know, I did that on this one. You know, this is the first pour and it blew out, so put it in on that one. So definitely need those front rebar stakes at least at the seam, because the back side's screwed in, you know, to 2x4. I'm liking it though. Next thing now is, this is all nasty and muddy. This is where a pokeweed was. Had probably about a 3-foot root on it. You know, there's a massive, like 2.25 maybe inch thick diameter, 3-inch thick diameter maybe, as a base, and then tapering down over 3 foot. That's a pokeweed. That's why I was like that. I pulled that out just because it was hanging in the way. Digging this out, that's like a 4-foot landing. Digging it out to that, you know. This is bedrock right here, so that's going to be a lot of pickaxing, you know, for this front area. I've already pulled the concrete off back when I was here 18 months ago, you know. And that's kind of like, these are just some loose concrete chunks that I pulled off, you know, and stacked the concrete in there. But this is concrete that I couldn't get out back then. Kind of where I stopped, you know, trying to chisel out and break up this concrete right in here. So there's a lot of screed in the pad, you know. Get down to the side. This is where I was screen it from there over to here. So right here is the excess, when I was screening the pad for the bunker house. So shoveling the excess off, screed a little bit more, shovel the excess off, screed a little further, So this is where all the excess pad concrete got shoveled, So I got to dig through that. That's going to be a nightmare. So it doesn't look like much, but this is going to be a project, clearing this out 4 foot wide all the way over, probably to right about here, And then there'll just be this little, you never know what it'll be, 18-inch or something, whatever piece, Maybe I'll just, clear it out all the way to here, Even though 4 foot would be to there, maybe I'll just go like a little further, just bring it like this. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna go like this. That's pretty much 4 foot. Dig that out, and then do these retaining walls there and pad through here, pad throughout there, and then start on that over there. This will have to be dug out before I do this side pour. Dug out again over there. I'll do one more of these over here. Just take me to like right about here, and then right here is the ramp. Will be the ramp going down. It's kind of already started it. But since then, I've lowered the grade another 2 feet. So you can't even tell that there's a ramp there now. But this will be the ramp going down, and then over to the hand pump well and the deer shot spot. So it's kind of drag the deer up the ramp, process it in the compost toilet, and then shower in the outdoor shower. Yeah, so that's gonna be this one though, is digging out that, just getting it ready.
I mean, in reference to what you said about, Tim, about cluster bombs and stuff, I mean, the Vietnam War started in 1954, I think is when, and the French were kind of doing most of the combat role there and doing most of the fighting. And the U.S. didn't actually really get involved until 64. And then it was a whole nother 10 years. It's completely reasonable to say that, we're a year and change in on the war in Ukraine or whatever. And all this stuff that we said we weren't going to send, all of these things that the government said they weren't going to be doing, they keep coming and come back and say, okay, well, now we're going to. So there's no actual line that the U.S. won't cross, or at least that we as a population can reliably say, okay, we believe the government won't do this. The government has demonstrated over and over that they'll say one thing, and as soon as it comes time to be what they deem a necessity, they say we need to go ahead and do this for this reason. Completely expected, or should be expected, that if the U.S. has said, no, we're not going to do this, if the conditions on the ground demand it, or an argument can be made that the conditions on the ground demand it, they're going to do it. And I think that is up to and including a nuclear exchange with Russia, if it gets to that point. Now, I'm not saying that it will, but if you put Americans on the ground in Ukraine, I could see that happening, and I don't see the off ramp for this to get us out of eventually sending people to fight in Ukraine.
This is why I bring this up. This is the tit for tat. We say, oh, no cluster bombs, you can't do that. Then we do cluster bombs. They start producing an international gold-backed currency. We have this here. Take a look at this. Willem Middlecoop says 41 countries have applied for BRICS membership. This is massive. This is, what is this, like just about a third of the world?
Yeah, and I mean, and
not
to
in
many
terms
in our
of
government,
population,
but
maybe with China.
To many in government, I mean, these are fighting words, saying that we are going to use a currency that is not controlled by the United States of America. It's something that's very frightening for those in the ruling elite to hear. And to be frank, those are frightening words for your average person, too, if you really consider them, because if we do lose our status as world reserve currency, the quality of life is going to diminish for basically everybody in this country. Now, you got to imagine the position that foreign leaders are in and foreign nations are in. They see how we have absolutely abused our status as world reserve currency and the fact that people need to trade in our dollar and are compelled to by the way the market functions currently. In 2020, when COVID-19 crippled our economy, or at the very least, I should say, when the lockdowns and the overreaction to COVID-19 crippled our economy, what our government did is they responded by engaging in the most gigantic transfer of wealth that has ever occurred in all of human history, and they gave virtually all of the money to the wealthiest people in this nation and devalued the currency of everyone who had savings in order to engage in that transfer of wealth. Now, anyone who was paying attention at that time said, this is going to massively harm those in the lower classes. This is massively going to harm people who have saved. And this is also going to harm people who own small businesses, because the SBA was expected to handle something like 10 times its yearly budget over the course of a month or 2 weeks in order to get this bailout money to small businesses. Now, the giant businesses that got, $4.2 trillion in low interest loans were able to leverage that to purchase up a lot of those smaller businesses after they closed down. And it was done with your currency being devalued. Now, poor and working class people don't have a whole lot of recourse for that, but you know who does have a lot of recourse for that. Rich people in other nations who are holding U.S. currency who didn't get that payout, as well as oligarchs and rulers of other countries that have stashed U.S. dollars because they had some faith that the United States dollar was going to carry its value over into the future. And many of them are saying, you know what, we're probably going to use our clout to punish the American dollar and punish people who are in control of it by pulling out and signing on to some new currency.
What gets me kind of worried is, let me jump to this story. We'll keep it all particularly esoteric. We have this from CoinDesk. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink says Bitcoin could revolutionize finance. A lot of people are starting to ask themselves why it is the CEO of BlackRock, this massive financial institution, is all of a sudden doing a turnaround and supporting Bitcoin. That one's kind of concerning. I should say disconcerting. When there's talk of the U.S. losing its status as a reserve currency, especially over the past several years, and now more so with BRICS nations launching a gold-backed currency, the idea that this guy's going to come out and be like, I care about people, and I think, they should listen. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say anything. Maybe not. Maybe what happens is, and again, I don't know, I'm not a finance guy, so don't take my advice for it. If the U.S. loses its status as the reserve currency, war breaks out. The dollar's going to fall to garbage. You're not going to be eating bread. You're going to be eating bugs and living in a pod. And that's what I wonder about all this. When they say you will own nothing and you will be happy, maybe what they're not people think they're saying they're going to take the world from you. Maybe what they're really saying is when the war happens, you ain't getting none of this stuff no matter what you do. The food's going to be going to the soldiers, to the front line. Resources and everything will be straight into war. And what will you have? Worthless green pieces of paper. To be honest, digital numbers on a computer screen.
We'll see rationing all over again. During the Second World War, that was a reality. People could only consume so many resources regardless of their level of wealth because the government was saying, we need to use this rubber or fuel or food for the war effort.
So let me ask you guys what makes more sense. That powerful elites in Europe and the USA want you to eat bugs because of their ideology, or they were preparing you for eating bugs because ain't gonna be no food when war breaks out?
Well, I think it's a combination. I think that if your ideology is so corrupt and you hold human life so cheap, then it's inevitably going to be the case you'll make the sorts of reckless decisions that will result in your economy being destroyed and people ending up being plunged into warfare, which will destroy their resources and lower their quality of life.
I don't think that it needs to be either or. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I think that there are ample reasons for ideologically possessed people that are in positions of power to say, look, you shouldn't be eating steak. You shouldn't be eating all this beef. You should, and red meat and stuff. You should be eating something that's simpler and something that's better for the planet. Because there are people that truly believe that the world is overpopulated and that we need to significantly decrease the number of people on Earth because we keep devouring the resources and we can't produce enough resources and food to sustain the population that we have. And while I don't believe that, I do believe that there are probably a considerable number of people in positions of power that are capable of doing something about it and actually affecting populations and policy that could significantly lower the population of the Earth. And I think that the the global warming alarmism that you see is the most likely method. So things like, you know, you can't have cows because they are bad for the environment, and these bugs are better for the environment are compelling arguments to people that are already ideologically kind of aligned or are used to getting beat down with the world is ending because of climate change kind of thing. So I don't think that it needs to be one or the other. I think that there are multiple reasons why people in positions of power would want to say, look, you can't live the life that you've been living, and you need to roll back your standard of living.
Do you guys remember that there was a document that went viral from some security contractor that claimed the U.S. population would be reduced by like 60%?
We talked about this. I never remembered seeing that document.
Because it was
but you and
erased
I had
from
a
everywhere.
conversation about this.
Based on what, though?
So there, we don't know. Some kind of defense contractor put together a report talking about future plans, and it listed the populations of many countries as having been reduced by like 30 to 40% or something like that, or more. And the document was deleted. I don't think we ever got a real explanation for it. I'm not saying it means it's true or anything. I hate conspiracy theories. So, you know, for all we know, they were creating a hypothetical scenario in the event of war or something like that. But then the archives all got deleted, and now it's really hard to find any information. It is as if it has been erased from the internet. It makes you wonder about what's really being talked about behind the scenes. Because, look, for all we know, Occam's razor suggests this is just a nonsense document. Some random guy said the population would go down or something like this. But as we see more and more signs of major conflict escalating, like the cluster munitions thing is a big deal. There's fears of the Zaporizhzhia plant being blown up. I believe it's the Zaporizhzhia one, right? That's where they're saying that the Russians have lined explosives all around it or something like that.
I don't know.
I don't know. You know, you get propaganda on both sides, and you got to figure out who you want to trust. But isn't it convenient for all of us, as Norm Macdonald pointed out, that the good guys won every war? Keep that in mind as you consider the news that's coming out today with all of these major conflict stories. But also, I think it's important to think about. I talked about this during COVID, and I don't know if we were talking about in the context of war, but what is the one thing that is guaranteed that COVID did? It got people to move out of cities.
Yeah.
It decentralized our economy. You had everybody working from the office. If that office got destroyed for some reason, let's say everybody's working in an office and the fire breaks out, people get trapped inside. That company's gone. Let's say you push everybody to remote work and get them out of cities. That office gets caught in a fire. Your company still exists. Digital economy. People are able to communicate, facilitate, and keep working. So it made me wonder when we saw COVID and the main result was large exodus of major economic power from large cities. Decentralizing the U.S. economy sure was helping us prepare, whether intentionally or not, for a major conflict. If New York were to get nuked now, our economy would still function to a great degree because many of these people who run these systems have left. And they've spread out even. So it's harder to target. Pre-COVID, with all of the big heads of industry in San Francisco, in California, in New York, many in Chicago, a single nuclear weapon, your economy's gone. Post-COVID, not so much. They're not going to be able to target the CEOs in all these different random places. Even celebrities and actors are moving all over the place. They're not in the same place anymore.
The people running these blue states are secret heroes. They're trying to get everybody out of the cities.
Russia still is the country that has the most nuclear weapons in the world.
Are their nukes as powerful as ours, though? Like,
I don't know.
1-to-1?
I'm not 100% sure of the yield.
I think they're more powerful.
No.
But they
have the Satan II, tidal wave bomb or whatever it's called. Some of them, in fact, the most powerful nuclear weapon ever built was by the Soviets. Tsar bomb.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
And they only ever used it a quarter yield or something, or
half.
Yeah.
100 megatons was the design, and they only used 50. I think is the.
And the bomber that dropped it fell 2 kilometers from the sky in the shockwave when then recovered.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yep.
That's terrifying.
I mean,
imagine what they have now. I don't think it's nuclear weapons. I think they're way beyond this stuff. I mean, we're talking about a weapon 100 years ago. A 100-year-old bomb. Come on, they got something else already. Sure. Yeah, antimatter weapons. How much you want to bet they have antimatter bombs?
Well, I mean, look, we know that different countries have been creating bioweapons, and we just know this because one was released. Now, Sir Francis Boyle, who was the author of the American Implementing Legislation for the Bioweapons Convention, has stated as a lawyer that these are, if anything made with gain-of-function research, is classified as a bioweapon. So that's not even like a conspiracy theory or a hot take. That is the author of the legislation that governs these affairs, specifically stating these are bioweapons, like anything made through gain-of-function research. And we know gain-of-function research is happening. So who knows what's been created? Who knows the kinds of ugly things that have been engineered by scientists that could be unleashed onto the public at any moment?
So we learned during COVID that Asians were more susceptible to the virus because they have more ACE2 receptors. Think about something like that. We know that this particular group of people has more of one type of receptor in their lungs, therefore they may be more susceptible to a virus. Now think about how they're going to make bioweapons. They're going to be like, hey, this particular group of people is susceptible to this particular thing, and then one day everyone in that country is very sick. That's bioweapons. And there will be collateral damage.
Yeah, well, no, we also know, like, based on the part of the world you're in and a lot of genetic factors, you can be more or less susceptible to diseases. This is the entire point that gets brought up anytime anyone wants to discuss, like, colonization and the conquistadors, the fact that the Spanish were totally immune to the diseases they were bringing over. They didn't even know they had them. Someone could theoretically engineer viruses and disease that would be more likely to wreak havoc on populations of different people genetically. That's terrifying.
I always get real, like, and I don't know how realistic this is because I have no idea about how bugs are engineered or anything. But the idea of Ebola with like a 3-week incubation period or 2-week incubation period.
An airborne Ebola.
Yeah, just spreads around and it takes weeks before you just start puking and bleeding out your eyes, and you're contagious the entire time. That the idea of that just terrified the absolute crap out of me because that would run wild through the whole country.
And then you would have basically everyone in this country demanding lockdowns.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
We did talk about this too. I think, Ian asked the question when we were like, oh, we're all against lockdowns. He was like, what if it was an airborne Ebola? And it's like, that's a tough question because now you're looking at people puking up their organs and stuff in the middle of the street. But the issue is still, you have a right to choose if you want to take that risk.
Well, but there's another point here. I think a lot of the argument against, like, vaccinations or forced vaccinations or lockdowns or whatever it is, they aren't necessarily axiomatic arguments. They're questions of whether factors are such that it justifies it. So if you did have an Ebola, if there was an Ebola that had like a 99% transmission rate and 99% mortality rate, 100% you lock things down.
Except people trust the government.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm saying if that really is the case and you really have those numbers, of course people are going to say, yeah, do it.
But that's the thing. It's not even going to be a question because if you got like people like in mass just like puking and dying in the streets and stuff like that, people are gonna voluntarily be like, get the F out of here, get away from my house, I'm not going out. It would be a lockdown that was completely voluntary. The police and the only people that would be going to work would be like doctors that actually could do something, and if even, because a lot of times when you get to something, if you get to something that dramatic, there'd be a lot of people that are just like, I'm staying home with my family.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. It would mostly be voluntary. My point is simply that when you get to a certain point of transmission and mortality with the disease, lockdowns are going to be more or less justifiable.
What will destroy the world? Incubation period of 2 weeks, airborne, high mortality, and a disease that takes 4 to 6 weeks to kill you. So escalating degrees of severity. Let's talk about the absolute, worst case scenario, because if we're talking about actual engineered bioweapons, these things are going to be horrifying. We're talking about a virus that is airborne, transmissible when a person is asymptomatic, a couple weeks incubation period, high mortality rate. It would be impossible to stop unless everyone locked their doors and no one did anything ever again.
What are the chances of a government actually trying to build that virus?
I think 100%.
Yeah. We may have it now.
Yeah.
They're not going to tell us what's going on, but
Why wouldn't they do it? I mean, look at nuclear weapons. They can wipe out a whole city with a single MIRV. They can wipe out multiple cities with a MIRV. 12 warheads in one ICBM. I hate these acronyms. Let's try this again. 12 warheads in one multiple independently targeting re-entry vehicles, and that's what a MIRV is. It's an intercontinental ballistic missile. You say like MIRV and ICBM, and people are like, I have no idea what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough. Are we sitting here spinning our wheels and wasting our time arguing about culture war nonsense?
No.
When you go to the highest
No.
when you go to the highest levels and you see this is the case, let's talk about the realm of domestic politics in this regard. if Donald Trump's worldview is really, let's not have the war that destroys the planet, let's shore up our borders, protect the United States, bring back manufacturing, and become self-sufficient because the long fall is coming. And the alternative is, no, let's go all out, take over the world, and destroy BRICS by any means necessary so that we can stay on top of the world. Which do you choose? I think the Trump angle is the better one.
Well, absolutely. Not just practically speaking, but morally speaking. Not only would there would be so much bloodshed and lost life if we tried doing something like that, but it assumes that other nations don't have the right to develop currencies while we're debasing ours. It assumes that other nations should be forced into dollar slavery and have to hold this asset, this currency, while we're abusing it and showing them we don't respect it ourselves.
Here's the challenge. The Chinese Communist Party is pretty dang evil.
They are very evil.
And
absolutely.
So there's the other argument of, if we just decide, you know what, we're going to close our doors to a great degree, not not completely, but we're going to bolster the American economy and we're going to focus on ourselves. China's going to keep expanding. They're not going to stop.
Well, it depends. I mean, firstly, China does get a lot of money from the United States just with respect to the business that we do with them. So if we just started doing everything domestically, it would be painful for us, but I also think it would be very painful for them. I'll also add that if we were to go to war with China over human rights abuses, if there was like a real legitimate reason for us to go to war, if you went through all the tenets of just war theory and they all lined up, then yeah, but that's a different question than just going to war with them over them wanting to use a currency that isn't ours.
Okay.
The justification is a massive part of it. Yeah. Yeah.
I think everyone was just in agreement. We could shame it.
Good. Good. I like that. Perfect. Shimcast IRL. Here we are.
There you go. I mean, I don't know. The whole brick.
The question is, what does a regular family do?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question. You've said this on the show before, but at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I'll say it again for you. I believe it's a good idea for people to get out of blue areas, generally speaking. Not even necessarily because of this question, but just the fact that blue states and blue cities end up having really bad policies. There are going to be a lot of people there who are like not a good influence for you and your family. So I'll put that out there. And then, you know, it's recommended by federal agencies, even in the United States, that you should have some emergency food stored up. I think people should do that. Just try to live as moral a life as possible. People aren't going to be surprised to hear this from me because this is the advice I'm going to give in every situation. But get close to Jesus Christ, really get right with God, live a moral life. And then if something horrible ends up happening, if America ends up being destroyed, well, you lived a good life. You did the right thing. You formed the proper relationship with the truth.
Let's jump to some domestic politics here because we have this story out of Georgia. Actually, was trending earlier in the day. Georgia state representative makes moral decision to leave party. Rep. Mesha Maynor quit the Democratic Party and has joined the GOP, saying for far too long the Democrat Party has gotten away with using and abusing the black community. That's it. She's from District 56. She has been in since January 2021. She ran unopposed by a Republican challenger in the 2020 and 22 Democrat primary elections in the state, and now she's quitting. It's not the first time. Won't be the last time. But I have to wonder what's in store for us in 2024 if this trend continues, because the reality is we're not seeing the inverse trend. No. This idea of Republicans jumping ship and becoming Democrats is just not a thing. It happens sometimes, but not really. Typically, it's neocons and people who want war siding with neo-libs who agree with them on war. But when it comes to cultural issues, like her issue with school choice, Democrats say outright, no, do as you're told. And she was like, I'm out. I'm out.
I think that what you mentioned about it not going the other way, that it's not really neocon, not really conservatives or whatever, I think that they all kind of beat feet in 2016. If you were anti-Trump or whatever, and you were an establishment type Republican, they kind of have already left the party, and they did it years ago. So would speak to this phenomenon of Democrats. I mean, you see it in the in the political space, but you also see it, with what's her name, Anna Kasparian. There was another leftist that has recently come out and left, essentially left, and a lot of it is because they find out that the narrative that is spun by the left generally does not map onto the truth. It doesn't map onto reality, and there are going to be people that are going to disagree about the places where it doesn't map onto reality. But I think that the LGBT issues, when it comes to transitioning kids, is where the breaking point for most people are. It's like, look, you cannot have trans kids. You cannot have kids that are prepubescent, that you're encouraging, not just allowing, but encouraging at times to live their lives as if they're a different, as if they're biologically different. That is unacceptable to the mass majority of the population. And I think that that's starting to show when it comes to, I don't know the specific reasons that what's her name? Maynard?
Maysha Maynard.
Maynard. I don't know why she specifically left. I don't know. I haven't read her specific